Most people imagine that poverty clings to a person because of accidents of birth, lack of luck, or unfairness in the world. But the deeper truth is that poverty survives because people follow patterns that guarantee it. They think like everyone else, act like everyone else, and in doing so, they trap themselves inside the 95% who never rise above conformity. Poverty is not just a lack of money, it is the absence of vision, the refusal to choose a definite purpose, and the surrender to the drifting tide of the crowd. To escape it, one must break away from the ordinary, make the decision to define a goal and hold to it with relentless focus until it is achieved. Until that choice is made, the poor will remain poor, not because they must, but because they never decided otherwise. When you look at the world, you see a dividing line. 5% stand out. They are the ones who set their own course. They know exactly what they want and devote themselves to it. The rest wander without a rudder, carried wherever the winds of circumstance push them. Imagine a ship leaving harbor with no chart, no destination, and no captain at the helm. It drifts until it crashes against the rocks. This is the way most people live. They wake without a mission, work without vision, and go to bed without progress. Then they wonder why their lives remain stuck. The difference between success and failure is not brilliance or talent, it is clarity of purpose and the discipline to pursue it. The poor stay poor because they mistake busyness for direction. They fill their days with activity but rarely ask, what is the one thing I am moving toward? Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. The moment a man or woman defines that ideal and begins moving toward it, they are already successful, regardless of current wealth. The tragedy is that 95% never define their ideal. They hope that life will reveal it for them or that luck will provide it. But luck is no strategy, and drifting is no plan. If you do not set the target, you cannot hit it. And if you do not choose your path, you will travel down someone else's. There is a law that never fails. Our rewards in life will always be in direct proportion to our service. The poor resist this law. They think only of wages, never of contribution. They seek to take before they give, to demand before they serve. But the law does not bend. To earn more, one must serve more. Look at every great fortune and you will find behind it a great service, products, ideas, solutions that help countless people. To serve greatly is to be rewarded greatly. To serve poorly is to be rewarded poorly. If you are dissatisfied with your income, examine your service. Increase the value you give and the world will have no choice but to increase what it returns. Yet people resist this. They argue with the law, as though refusing to believe in gravity would let them float. Some even resent it. But resentment does not change the law, it only robs the resenter. The truth is unchanging. Wealth flows to service, poverty flows to neglect. It is a choice, whether made consciously or unconsciously, every single day. If you would escape poverty, you must reverse the question from what can I get to what can I give. For every measure of genuine service, life returns a measure of reward, and when service grows tenfold, so does reward. This is not opinion, it is law. Another reason the poor remain poor is that they underestimate the power of environment. A man becomes like the company he keeps. Most people are surrounded by the 95% who conform, who drift, who never get the word. They talk about limits, complain about circumstances, and reinforce failure. To rise, you must rise out of that environment. You must saturate your mind with higher thoughts, greater visions, and the voices of those who have succeeded. If you cannot find such company in person, find them in books, in study, and mentors from the ages. Devote an hour a day to the great thinkers, and in 5 years you will not recognize yourself. Your income, your influence, your confidence will all have multiplied. Security, too, is misunderstood by the poor. They believe security comes from jobs, from bosses, from institutions. Yet all jobs can vanish, all bosses can dismiss, all institutions can fail. True security comes from within, from skill, mastery, and the quiet confidence of one who can perform his work surpassingly well. That is the one form of wealth that cannot be taken, the one fortress that no storm can shake. To pursue security outside oneself is to chase shadows. To build it within is to command life. And once a man knows that his mind, his skill, and his service are his security, he ceases to fear the future. Let us pause to write a law that must be engraved into the heart. Say it aloud with me, write it down on paper, let it enter your subconscious as an unshakable truth. I become what I think about, and my reward is in exact proportion to my service. This is the key to escaping poverty. This is the anchor that will hold you steady. This is the compass that will guide your ship through storms. Fix it in your mind, repeat it daily, and measure your life by it. The escape from poverty, then, is no mystery. It begins with a decision. It grows with service, it flourishes in disciplined thought, and it is secured by professional mastery. Most people will never make this choice because most people never dare to think for themselves. But you are not most people. You are listening now not to drift, but to act. To join the 5%, you must step away from the crowd, claim your goal, and serve with strength. The laws of life do not change, but the moment you align yourself with them, your life begins to change with startling speed. The poor stay poor because they fail to decide, they fail to serve, they fail to think for themselves. But you do not need to fail. From this moment on, choose your purpose, define your service, guard your mind, and build your security within. The path is not easy, but it is simple, and it is open to all who will walk it. Say your law again, write it down once more. I become what I think about, and my reward is in exact proportion to my service. Fix it deep within you, and watch as the world begins to reshape itself around the thoughts you have chosen, the service you have rendered, and the destiny you have claimed. And once you begin to see the world through this lens, you discover that poverty is not an accident, but a pattern repeated across generations. Children grow up hearing their parents speak of limits, watching them accept lives of smallness, and so the pattern continues. They are told, "Don't aim too high, you'll only be disappointed," or "People like us can't have that kind of life." These words sink deep into the subconscious, becoming invisible chains that hold a person back long after childhood. The poor stay poor because they inherit beliefs that serve as ceilings, and unless those beliefs are shattered, they become prisons that last a lifetime. But when even one person in a family dares to think differently, to refuse the inherited script, the cycle can be broken and a new story can be written. You see, the greatest poverty is not in the pocket, but in the imagination. A man who cannot see beyond his current circumstances is already defeated. Poverty feeds on blindness, on the inability to picture a greater future. Yet vision is the one tool given freely to every human being. The wealthy use it daily. They imagine the future they want, then align their service and their actions with that vision. The poor dismiss vision as fantasy, while the successful treat it as the first stage of creation. Every building you see began first in the mind of an architect. Every invention was once a sketch, a thought, an idea. The mind is the workshop of destiny. Those who use it deliberately rise. Those who let it rust remain stuck. The tragedy is that most people never learn the rules of the game of life. They drift, thinking they are powerless, when in fact they hold the power all along. Think of life as a game of chess. Those who learn the rules, who study the moves, who think strategically, soon master the board. Those who never bother remain pawns, moved at will by stronger hands. Poverty is the condition of those who never study the game. Wealth belongs to those who take the time to learn its principles and play with intention. The moment you learn the rules, service, vision, discipline, you begin to see why 95% remain trapped and why the 5% seem almost unstoppable. Environment too plays its silent role. A person surrounded by complainers will absorb complaint. A person surrounded by dreamers will absorb vision. Most live among complainers, so they inherit complaint. They talk about bills, shortages, bosses, and bad luck. But you cannot grow roses in a garden of weeds. If you are surrounded by weeds, you must plant new seeds daily and guard them fiercely. Better yet, find new gardens, new companions, new voices that pull you upward instead of downward. Even 1 hour a day spent with the great minds of history will transform your life more than years spent among the average. Choose your environment, or it will choose for you, and in that choice lies either growth or stagnation. The poor remain poor also because they chase the illusion of security in places it cannot be found. They cling to jobs, to titles, to institutions that can vanish in an instant. Then when they lose these things, they feel stripped bare. But real security has never lived in jobs or titles. It lives in skill, in knowledge, in personal mastery. The man who knows his craft, who can perform it surpassingly well, carries his security inside him. He can lose his position and yet rebuild, because his true wealth cannot be taken. The poor fear the loss of their job. The wealthy trust the permanence of their skill, and so long as you are building mastery within, you are building a fortress no circumstance can tear down. Let us write another law upon our minds and lips, a declaration to reverse the pattern of inherited poverty. Say it aloud and write it down so it takes root. I build my security within, and no force can take it away. This law, repeated daily, will begin to carve itself into your subconscious until you live it as truth. Every challenge will remind you that your security is not in the paycheck, nor the economy, nor the opinion of others. It is in you. You are the well that produces wealth. You are the craftsman who commands reward. And once you know this, fear loses its grip. The poor also stay poor because they mistake fatigue for finality. They stop when they feel tired, assuming they have given all they can. But fatigue is often false. Behind it lies reservoirs of energy untapped. The successful push beyond the first wall of exhaustion and discover strength they never knew they had. The poor stop when they feel weary. The wealthy continue until the work is done. This simple difference separates mediocrity from greatness. Most people live far below their limits because they obey false fatigue. Break through it, and you will learn that your true capacity is 10 times greater than you believed. Finally, the poor remain poor because they never assume responsibility for their destiny. They wait for governments, for bosses, for luck, for saviors. But waiting is surrender. Responsibility is power. The moment you accept that your life is yours alone to design, you reclaim control. You cannot dictate every event, but you can dictate your response, your focus, and your service. The wealthy accept this truth early. They say, "I am responsible," and then they act. The poor refuse it, blaming endlessly, and in doing so, they hand away the key to their own freedom. Responsibility may seem heavy, but it is the only weight that builds strength. So understand this. Poverty survives not because it must, but because people feed it. They feed it with inherited beliefs, with blind eyes, with weak environments, with false securities, with fatigue, and with blame. But each of these chains can be broken. You break them by deciding, by serving, by mastering your craft, by surrounding yourself with vision, and by claiming responsibility. Once you do, poverty becomes a past condition, not a permanent identity. Repeat your law once more so it takes deeper root. I build my security within, and no force can take it away. Hold it, believe it, live it, and watch as the chains fall away, one by one. If poverty is a cycle of thoughts, habits, and environments, then wealth is a cycle of clarity, service, and growth. The poor stay poor because they never interrupt the cycle. They wake with the same complaints, speak the same tired phrases, surround themselves with the same uninspired company, and expect that somehow life will reward them differently. But life is exact and impartial. It returns in proportion to what is sown. And so the first step in breaking this cycle is to disrupt the rhythm of old thinking. If every day you repeat the same words and follow the same patterns, you cannot escape their results. To rise, you must deliberately introduce new patterns, new disciplines, and new truths into your life until the old ones weaken and fall away. One of the most dangerous patterns that keep the poor locked in their condition is conformity. They conform to the crowd even when the crowd is walking toward a cliff. They live by imitation instead of imagination. 95% of people follow the same rules, chase the same comforts, and settle for the same mediocrity, believing safety lies in numbers. But safety does not lie in numbers, it lies in knowledge of the laws of life. The 5% who succeed are often ridiculed, doubted, even called foolish, because they refuse to conform. Yet it is in that refusal that freedom is found. To join them, you must dare to be different, dare to hold a goal in your mind that others may not understand, and dare to persist when they say you cannot. Another great trap of poverty is the obsession with immediate rewards. The poor seek quick gains and avoid long-term service. They chase schemes, shortcuts, and easy money, but in doing so, they rob themselves of the only wealth that lasts, the wealth that comes from compounding service and skill. The rich understand patience. They sow, water, and wait. They endure seasons of discipline before enjoying harvests of abundance. The poor plant one day and uproot the seed the next, demanding instant results. But the law cannot be rushed. Just as nature does not produce fruit overnight, so true wealth cannot be forced. It must be built, cultivated, and allowed to mature in its season. Those who accept this truth rise steadily. Those who reject it stumble endlessly. Ignorance also chains the poor. They underestimate the value of learning and overestimate the value of entertainment. Hours are wasted on distraction, while minutes are given to growth. Yet the mind is the single greatest asset any person possesses. Devote 1 hour a day to study, and in 5 years you can be an authority in your field. Devote that same hour to trivialities, and in 5 years you will remain unchanged. Knowledge is the fuel of progress. The poor neglect it, hoping to coast on luck. The successful pursue it with discipline, knowing it multiplies their service and sharpens their vision. This is why every man or woman serious about breaking poverty must choose daily study as a non-negotiable act of self-liberation. The poor also remain poor because they avoid the discomfort of growth. They choose ease over effort, convenience over challenge. But comfort is a silent killer. Nothing great has ever been built in its shadow. Wealth, strength, and mastery are forged in difficulty, in long nights, in demanding work that stretches the mind and body. Those who grow accustomed to discomfort become unstoppable, for no setback surprises them. Those who avoid discomfort remain fragile, collapsing at the first sign of resistance. Poverty thrives where comfort is worshipped. Wealth thrives where growth is pursued, no matter how hard it feels in the moment. Ask yourself daily, am I seeking comfort or am I seeking growth? For the answer will determine which side of the line you walk on. Another truth is that the poor often waste their energy on envy. They look at those who succeed and resent them instead of learning from them. They poison their minds with comparison, failing to see that envy blinds while study opens eyes. Every successful person leaves behind a trail of lessons, books, words, and examples. The wise observe and apply, while the poor complain and excuse. Envy keeps the poor chained because it focuses their eyes outward in bitterness instead of inward in responsibility. When you trade envy for study, resentment for observation, your life begins to shift. What once irritated you now instructs you. What once felt unfair now feels like a model. And from that model you can build your own fortune. Let us pause here and engrave another law into the mind. Say it aloud and write it down, for repetition carves truth into the subconscious. I refuse to conform. I refuse to envy. I choose to grow. This law, repeated daily, will make you alert to the traps of imitation and bitterness. It will remind you that growth is never found in copying the crowd or resenting the successful, but in daring to stand apart and pursue your own mastery. Fix this declaration in your mind until it becomes instinct. With it, you will find the strength to resist conformity, the humility to learn, and the courage to grow. The poor stay poor because they do not know themselves. They live reactively, shaped by others' opinions, molded by circumstance, never daring to define their own ideals. But life rewards individuality. The strong life is not a copy, but a creation. Define who you want to become, write it down in detail, and begin acting that role every day. You will grow into it just as surely as a seed grows into a tree. Most will never do this, which is why most remain trapped. But the moment you take pen to paper and describe the person you choose to be, you have stepped into the 5%. You have chosen individuality over conformity, vision over drift, destiny over accident. So understand, poverty persists not because of fate, but because of patterns, conformity, impatience, ignorance, comfort, and envy. Break these patterns and you break poverty. The laws are simple, but their impact is extraordinary. Begin by declaring your law once more, engraving it deeper. I refuse to conform. I refuse to envy. I choose to grow. Let it be the shield you carry into every day, and the reminder that you are not bound to remain as you were. The poor remain poor because they do not understand leverage. Not the financial kind, but the leverage of the mind and of service. A man who insists on doing only what is asked of him, who gives only the bare minimum, condemns himself to remain where he is. He exchanges his time for wages, nothing more, and wonders why he never rises. But the one who goes further, who adds value beyond what is required, multiplies his influence and positions himself for opportunities that the average man will never see. Life itself bends to those who provide more than they are paid for. Poverty lingers in the souls of those who refuse to do more than expected. Wealth begins in the hands of those who exceed expectations, not once, but habitually, until it becomes their very identity. Another reason the poor stay poor is that they fail to think independently about money. They treat money as something to be spent rather than something to be multiplied. The moment they earn it, it slips away into fleeting pleasures, temporary comforts, or status symbols meant to impress the equally poor. Wealth, however, grows in the soil of discipline. The rich understand that every coin is a seed, plant it wisely, and it grows into a tree that bears fruit for years. Waste it, and the soil remains barren. Poverty thrives in wastefulness, in the obsession with consumption. Escape begins the day you see money not as a toy but as a tool, one that can build security, expand service, and purchase freedom if used with foresight. Fear also stalks the poor. They fear risk, fear failure, fear the judgment of others, and in this fear they remain paralyzed, preferring the illusion of safety to the reality of growth. But fear is a liar. It whispers that danger is everywhere, when in truth the greatest danger is in doing nothing at all. Every fortune ever made was built on decisions that involved uncertainty. Every great leap forward was taken in the face of doubt. The poor allow fear to dictate their boundaries. The successful face fear, act in spite of it, and soon discover that most fears were only shadows without substance. To rise, you must learn to act while afraid, to walk forward even when the ground is not yet visible. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision that fear will not rule you. Poverty also thrives on excuses. The poor explain endlessly why they cannot rise, blaming governments, bosses, parents, or circumstances. Excuses become their shield, but also their prison. For every excuse defends their present condition and robs them of power to change it. The wealthy, by contrast, accept responsibility. They know they cannot control every circumstance, but they can control their response, their discipline, and their focus. Responsibility is the gateway to freedom, while excuses are the chains of poverty. The moment you say, "I am responsible for my life," you unlock the door that excuses kept shut, and in that moment, your rise begins. Another great reason the poor remain poor is neglect of vision. They do not set goals, and even when they do, they abandon them quickly. They wander through life like travelers without a map, hoping the road will lead somewhere good. But no ship sails without a destination. No builder constructs without a blueprint. Wealth belongs to those who define their aim, write it clearly, and commit themselves to it daily. Poverty belongs to those who drift. If you want proof, look around. The majority live as though tomorrow will arrange itself, but tomorrow obeys today's preparation. Every man or woman who has achieved greatness began with a definite vision, carried with relentless persistence until it became reality. Let us engrave another law, one that will strike directly at these roots of poverty. Say it aloud and write it on paper so it becomes a command to your subconscious. I serve beyond expectation. I use money as a tool, and I act with courage. Repeat it until it is carved into your very identity. With this law fixed in your heart, you will rise above the habits that trap the 95%. You will not limit your service to the minimum. You will not waste your resources, and you will not allow fear to silence your steps. This is how wealth begins, not in sudden windfalls, but in steady habits of service, discipline, and courage. The poor also stay poor because they live only in the present, ignoring the power of compound effort. They do not understand that the smallest daily disciplines repeated over time produce staggering results. They underestimate the effect of reading a single book, saving a single dollar, or practicing a single skill each day. The successful understand compounding. They know that 5 years of daily effort can make them unrecognizable, while 5 years of drifting leaves them unchanged. Poverty ignores the power of time. Wealth harnesses it. If you begin today, you will be amazed at what consistent effort will produce, not in weeks, but in years. Finally, the poor stay poor because they lack faith, not religious faith alone, but faith in themselves, in the laws of life, in the certainty that seeds will grow if planted and watered. They doubt constantly, wavering between belief and fear, never committing fully to a course of action. But faith is the unseen hand that holds the future steady. To act with faith is to plant the seed and trust the harvest. To doubt is to dig up the soil each morning, destroying the very seed you hoped would grow. Faith is not passive, it is active expectation, reinforced by disciplined action. The poor waver, the successful commit, and in that commitment lies the difference between a life of scarcity and a life of abundance. So remember this, poverty is not destiny, it is decision. To break free, you must reverse the patterns, serve more than required, treat money as seed, face fear, reject excuses, set goals, and live with faith. These are not complicated truths, but they are rare, for most will never apply them. But you are not most. Say your law once again. I serve beyond expectation, I use money as a tool, and I act with courage. Hold it close, repeat it daily, and watch how swiftly life begins to shift. For the laws of wealth never fail, and the moment you align with them, poverty begins to lose its grip forever. The poor remain poor because they fail to understand the immense power of clarity. Most drift through their days with vague wishes and undefined hopes, but no clear image of where they are going. Without clarity, their energy scatters. They work hard, yet their work leads nowhere because it is unfocused. The successful, on the other hand, define their goals in detail. They know precisely what they want, and that clarity acts as a magnet, pulling resources, people, and opportunities toward them. Poverty thrives in vagueness, wealth grows in precision. Until a man writes down his definite chief aim, his mind is like a ship without a compass. The moment he defines it, the course is set, and even storms cannot keep him from his destination. Another trap that keeps the poor in chains is their attitude toward time. They treat time as though it were endless, wasting hours daily without thought. They procrastinate, believing tomorrow will offer a better moment to act. But time is the most valuable resource a human being possesses, and it cannot be replaced. The wealthy guard it with discipline, investing it only where it multiplies results. The poor waste it on distractions, gossip, and empty pleasures. They do not see that every wasted hour is a stolen opportunity. Wealth belongs to those who treat time as sacred, who invest it with intention, and who refuse to waste it on pursuits that do not serve their vision. Poverty belongs to those who squander it carelessly, only to discover too late that their days have run out. The poor also remain poor because they lack persistence. They begin a task with enthusiasm but abandon it at the first sign of difficulty. They expect results quickly, and when results delay, they quit. Yet the road to success is always longer than expected, and the harvest always comes after the season of waiting. The successful persist where others surrender. They endure setbacks, losses, and failures, yet they continue. Persistence is not merely stubbornness, it is faith in action. It is the refusal to let temporary obstacles dictate permanent outcomes. Poverty is the result of quitting too soon. Wealth is the reward of those who refuse to stop, no matter how long the journey takes. Another cause of persistent poverty is poor associations. The poor surround themselves with others who reinforce weakness, doubt, and small thinking. They keep company with complainers, mockers, and those who discourage ambition. Environment shapes destiny, and so long as a man keeps the company of those who settle, he too will settle. The wealthy seek out mentors, peers, and companions who challenge them to grow, who inspire them to rise higher. They know that influence is contagious. To escape poverty, one must carefully guard their circle, allowing only those who strengthen vision, not those who poison it with negativity. Poverty whispers in the voice of the wrong crowd. Wealth is born in the company of visionaries. The poor also stay poor because they fail to master discipline. They allow moods, impulses, and fleeting desires to rule them. They eat what they crave, buy what they cannot afford, and indulge in pleasures that rob them of strength and resources. Wealth requires discipline, the ability to command oneself to do what must be done, whether one feels like it or not. The successful are not necessarily more talented, but they are more disciplined. They train their minds and bodies to obey vision, not appetite. Poverty bows to feelings. Wealth bows to principles. Until you master discipline, you will remain at the mercy of whims that lead nowhere. Another great truth is that the poor underestimate the power of imagination. They believe imagination belongs to artists or dreamers, not realizing it is the foundation of progress in every field. Every invention, every fortune, every empire began in the imagination of one who dared to see beyond what is. The poor see only what is in front of them, and so they remain stuck in it. The wealthy see what could be, and they build it. Imagination is the bridge between the present and the future. Poverty is blindness to possibility. Wealth is the ability to envision the unseen and act upon it. To escape poverty, one must reawaken the imagination and give it permission to build bold visions. Let us pause and write a new law, one that will tear down several of these chains. Say it aloud and write it clearly. I master time, I persist through challenges, and I guard my vision with discipline. This declaration, repeated daily, will rewire your subconscious. It will remind you that clarity and discipline are the foundations of wealth, that persistence is the engine of achievement, and that your time is the currency of your destiny. Fix it deep within you until every decision you make aligns with it. With this law in your heart, you cannot drift, you cannot waste, and you cannot quit. The poor remain poor because they fail to understand that success is built one deliberate step at a time. They expect leaps but ignore the small, consistent steps that create transformation. They want change without change, results without discipline, wealth without sacrifice. But life does not reward shortcuts. It rewards steady, faithful, disciplined action. Each day lived with clarity and persistence builds upon the last until the life you once imagined becomes the life you inhabit. Poverty ends the moment you decide to live with precision, to guard your time, to persist beyond resistance, to choose your company wisely, and to master yourself. So say your law again, engrave it deeper. I master time, I persist through challenges, and I guard my vision with discipline. With this truth alive in you, you are already stepping out of the 95%. You are no longer a drifter but a builder, no longer a prisoner but an architect of destiny. Poverty cannot hold one who lives this law. Wealth in all its forms begins to answer when a man or woman decides to live in alignment with it. The poor stay poor because they do not take command of their thoughts. They allow their minds to wander aimlessly, filling with worry, gossip, and trivialities. They think about everything except the one thing that would move them forward. Yet the mind is the most powerful instrument ever created, and it obeys the laws we feed it. If we plant weakness, weakness grows. If we plant strength, strength multiplies. Most people never discipline their thoughts, and so they live lives that mirror that confusion. The successful, however, guard their minds as kings guard their castles. They decide what enters, they choose what stays, and they focus relentlessly on what builds. Poverty is the result of a mind left untrained. Wealth is the harvest of a mind focused on